Welcome to the Brainz Magazine podcast, a podcast with in-depth interviews and conversations with world-class entrepreneurs, expert coaches, industry leaders, and international celebrities. Get exclusive insight into the world of business, mindset, leadership, and lifestyle with your host, Mark Sefton.
I want to welcome you to the next episode of the Brainz Magazine podcast. And today we have Ria Flanagan. I mean, what a solid name that is, Flanagan. Ria is the owner and director of Rise Up Recover. How are you today, Ria?
I'm good. It's early morning in Arizona and, I got my team ready to go.
What a fantastic name, though, Flanagan. It's one of those that's so solid. And I believe it derives from over this way in Europe, probably an island.
It's very Irish. Yes, my husband is very Irish and our children are very Irish. I got a Michaela. And so, yes.
And you're in green as well, which obviously, again, is a strong color for the Irish.
Yes. My mother has green eyes, so I have a little bit of blue-green. So, we're rocking the
And I've got green eyes, so...
Oh, you know what they say about people with green eyes?
What do they say?
Well, we're geniuses, obviously.
We must be quite radical because Coldplay wrote a song about green eyes, didn't they?
Yes. So funny. I met him one time. He was married though, so my flirting did nothing to get through that barrier.
Did it not? I think I would have flirted with him as well, and
he's very charming.
He is. Do you know what one thing that me and you have in common?
No, tell me.
Do you not know, Ria?
No.
So
we're both here right now.
You are on the cusp of releasing a book called Happiness is an Inside Job Playbook, right?
Yes.
My first book is called Inside Job.
Oh my gosh.
It's 10 years old this year. So I wrote that in 2014. Isn't that wild?
That's amazing. So now I have to read it.
So when I saw that, I was like, that's interesting.
Very, very. I mean, it was interesting in that. So the book was derived from a course I wrote during COVID. And all my clients, so I treat trauma and addiction in my private practice, and all my clients, and I think everyone around me, we're all sort of in this fight, flight, freeze state, right? We're going, what is going on? Like now we have to all leave our jobs and go home. And, it was chaos and everyone just needed tools. So I created 42 5-minute sort of videos and writing about just different tools to help regulate the nervous system. I have a background in somatic experiencing training. Dr. Peter Levine created that. And it's a lot to do with regulating trauma and moving out trauma from the body and helping people with dysregulation get tools and to regulate better. And so I put this together and all my clients loved it, and it was really daily practices that anybody can do, right? 5 minutes a day. And I was like, do one a day. If you want to do 5 a day, do 5 a day, right? And then build out of the 42 tools, build a daily practice for yourself, right? That what works for you, because everybody's different, not every tool is going to work for everyone. And so from there, I was like, well, more people could use this, more people could, raise their levels of happiness, because if you think about it, I can't feel happy if I'm numbed out. If I'm in a fight, flight, freeze state, if I'm always go, I'm not able to feel my feelings, I can't really hold joy. So the first step, a lot of that is learning how to regulate, be in the body. And when we're going through a pandemic, a lot of us are out of our bodies, because it's I don't want to feel this. I don't want to, feel the fear. So helping people get back in, help people, just take that step, because really our intuition, our wisdom, all of that comes from our emotions. And so if we're not able to feel, right, we're not able to really be making the best life decisions. So it's about helping people raise their levels of happiness, but it's also about just helping people be mind-body connected.
I love it. How do we really increase our happiness, Ria? Because, I've had a few things to say about happiness and joy myself. And, for me, happiness is a feeling, but joy is based on what you know, which is why you can still be joyful even in the midst of heartache, whereas happiness seems to be very much dependent on how we actually feel at any given time. But how do we increase our own happiness?
I think the biggest piece, right, is that we're not going to be always one emotion. So knowing that, right? Knowing that we in order to feel the joy, we also have to feel the pain, and we also have to feel some fear, because that the gifts of fear is wisdom, protection, right? Like we really it's knowing that. I think there's even joy in knowing that the feelings are our wisdom, our gifts, our teachers, and in that I can feel all of them and be okay. They're not my enemy. They're not the thing to numb out. They really are there to guide us. And if we're able to calm down enough, which is the tools I have a lot in my book, we're able to start coming down, tapping into those emotions, we're releasing them quicker, right? And so we're able to have more peace. And I think there is something about peace and happiness being interlinked, right? There's this piece that when I can feel calm, right, I'm able to hold happiness longer.
Mm-hmm.
Right? There's sort of this expansion of being able to sit with happiness. I think that, and joy and passion and love and all those really, the feelings we kind of go for, we want to have, right? I think what happens a lot of times, especially when we went through a pandemic, is everyone's trying to numb out the fear and these fight, flight, freeze responses, right? And what happens is also the joy, passion, love get numbed out too. We don't get to pick what we're numbing out. We just numb out everything, or we sort of learn how to regulate and actually tap into all of the feelings. So when we're able to move out and learn from all our emotions, we're able to have more peace, and then we can actually contain more joy, passion, love, and the things that we want.
That makes sense. So with these 42 tools that you created during COVID, and now you've created these daily practices for other people, why do you feel that people need to buy it? Do you still feel, obviously we're no longer in that COVID space, if somebody's kind of asking about this book and is saying, is this book still relevant because we're no longer in COVID times, like what?
Yes, I would say it's even more relevant because people have more capacity to be with the book more now, and the tools even more now, to a deeper level. I think at the time it was very much like maintenance, like just get through the day. But I think there's a much deeper dive available in the book, and I developed it further. So it's not the same as the course. But it definitely is, a place and a space to start looking at deeper pieces of self. So looking at where are some belief systems that maybe I've been living with all my life, that maybe I'm not good enough, or I'm not worthy, or I'm, or I don't fit in, or whatever these sort of limiting beliefs that a lot of us carry and don't even realize how deeply ingrained they are from childhood. Because 0 to 5, we sort of form so many beliefs about ourselves and the world, and our brains are also not developed enough to really challenge the beliefs, right? So a parent's like, yeah, you're doing so bad, da, 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 or go to your room. A child can make up, if that keeps happening, I'm bad, something's wrong with me. Mom's never happy with me. Like I just I'm flawed, and not even realize they're carrying that into their adult life. So there's this deeper dive to start retraining the brain, starting to look at and peel back these layers. There's also intergenerational trauma. So our parents may have their limiting beliefs that they're kind of projecting onto their kids, not meaning to, right? This isn't a blame game. We don't heal in a blame space, right? Or a victim space, but there's this piece of starting to recognize that there is intergenerational trauma from, wars and, different things that our grandparents and their grandparents all went through. And again, really dysregulated nervous systems raising children, right? And children don't know what boundaries are, so they just absorb everything. And, and so we're also looking now at starting to peel back some of that so that we really can evolve. Because if we're really repeating patterns from our family, it makes it difficult to do it that much differently. I mean, I think we all want to do a little better than our parents did, right? Like that's, always the goal. But if we're not able to really see, or really be mindful about how we're parenting and who we're being, a lot of times we just go back in and do what our parents did subconsciously. So, yeah, I know I said a lot really fast.
No, it's good. I mean, the good thing with a podcast, people can go back and listen to it multiple times. We hear a lot at the moment about emotional intelligence, and I'm always interested in emotional intelligence. How do we increase it, Ria? How do we actually become even more emotionally aware, emotionally healthy, emotionally available, emotionally intelligent? Is the things that you suggest that we can do to increase our own?
Mhm. I think so. And I think one of the pieces of that is identifying, right, that number one, our emotions are not the enemy, right? And so if you think about, right, a culture, right, and how we're raised, and what are the emotions in where you were raised, and like what were the emotions that were okay for you to feel growing up, as opposed to maybe if you had a sister, or right, like, or for me, right, and I sort of think about that a lot. And even with my husband, sort of watching him almost really do the same thing that his dad did to him, which is kind of like, yeah, don't whine, or don't be sad. Or I'm like, hey, like, he can be sad. Sadness is not the enemy here, right? Like, it's okay. We can feel these things. And so I think there's a really big piece of noticing that there's a culture that's shifting,
Yes.
slowly, but there's a culture that's shifting, saying, hey, emotions are not the enemy. The emotions are where the wisdom is. That's where the maturity comes from. That's where the connection, the empathy that makes us feel like we're not alone, right? Is that we all feel these feelings. So working inpatient at the Meadows, I work with trauma and addiction, and I'd have a room full of different either mental health, trauma, or addiction, or all of the above. And someone would be like, oh, well, this is my drug of choice, well, this is mine, and look how we're so different. And I'd be like, nah, move that aside. What's underneath that?
Mm-hmm.
All these emotions, we all have them.
Mm-hmm.
So stop comparing and judging and saying, I'm over here and you're over there, and start noticing, like, we're all skin and bone. We all feel the feelings. It's just, what do we make up about feeling the feelings, right? Do we make up, oh, I like, it's not okay to get mad as a woman, right? Maybe I had to hold that in and, try to be good and perfect, and, try to be nice, and all these things, right? There's a really good book by Gavin DeBecker called Gifts of Fear. Have you read that?
I
It's
haven't.
it's it's really great, because he was a bodyguard to political figures, stars, like a lot of people, and he trained other bodyguards about intuition, about fear, and about how that's really there, right? Like, that's his job, is to notice if anything's out of right sorts, and it's a
Mm-hmm.
feeling sensation, right? He really talks about that. And so emotional intelligence, right, is getting into the body, is starting to really harness the emotions to be really your superpower, right? Is like, this guy really talks about how he has saved lives by being in touch with fear, right?
Mm.
Not trying to escape it, but actually using it to hone in on safety and security for his people. That's his job. And he's like very famous for that. So, and then he talks about that. He talks about teaching women how to tap into their fear so they can create more safety in their lives, right? Because what have a lot of women been taught is be nice, right? The stranger comes up to them. We've been taught, be nice, don't do that. So we're nice, right? But that stranger may not be nice. So we've got to start listening to the intuition, right? And creating situations where we're not not validating ourselves. And so
Mm.
emotional intelligence, really, ways to do that is coming back, and just like everything in my book, right, it's coming back and starting to be able to do regulating things so that I can actually be in touch with my body, right? Not always doing, not always on the go, like taking time, right, for meditation, for prayer, for just self-reflection, for really getting into what are my wants and needs today, like what am I passionate about? I think so many people go through their lives, working a job they don't even like, maybe marrying the wrong person, doing all these things because I should. It's
Mm.
all cognitive, right? Oh, I should, and this is what I want to fit in, and this is what I'm going to do. But they're not tapped into their body. And so then you see people having affairs, people, doing poorly in their job. It's like, because maybe you're never supposed to be there in the first place. If you were tapped into your emotions and your body, and you're making decisions from intuition, you can have a very different life. And my book is really saying, like, it's not too late, right? There's ways to kind of peel things back and start getting more connected, and make shifts now.
Mm. Yeah, I love that. I love self-discovery, Ria, and it seems that more and more people are really demanding, but also requiring and wanting more authentic and organic. So, with that being said, how can we become more true to ourselves? How do we take those times of meditation and pause? How do we tune into ourselves that so that we can express ourselves from a place of organic and authentic?
So once you are able to like apply the tools, and again, it really is daily practices. So think about this, right? We didn't learn how to walk day one, right? We didn't learn how to talk day one. We didn't learn how to drive a car, all those things. So it's very similar in that we're connecting, we're slowing down, right? We're starting to feel our feet on the floor, we're starting to feel our muscles and learning how to release them, and learning how to be more in a relaxed state so that I can access, oh, like where do I feel where do I feel love? Where do I feel sadness? Where do I feel fear, right? In the chest, upper chest constriction. Where do I feel guilt and shame? Oh, stomach, or shame has sort of that like, oh, like, and then there's also this piece of, and I just want to mention this, is if we have carried shame, this is not helpful for us, right? So we want to start also, once we tap into the body, we're able to feel the feelings, we're able to check in. It's noticing what is stuff I'm carrying that isn't even mine. And this is where I go back to that intergenerational trauma. And what beliefs do I have around that? So if I feel like the shame and I'm like, wait, let's do an assessment. Like, did I do anything wrong? Did I like, did I steal someone's baby? Did I run over somebody's, like, what did I do? But no, it's just sitting in my body. Like, why? Right. And so there's techniques and working with a therapist, working with a coach. I mean, really, we can't do all this on our own. So even my book says throughout, like, if you're noticing that like you have a lot of carried emotions or beliefs that you're having a hard time, like you're stuck in, but that they're not helping you, that is where like community, a guide, right, a good licensed therapist is going to be your best friend around some of this stuff. Especially if you have high reactivity in your life, like if people are experiencing rage or panic attacks or things that feel really unmanageable, like I'm not able to, like just calm down and deal with that. That's where bringing in professionals for support, but still they're going to give you these daily practices too, right? So again, it comes back to those daily practices so that we are able to start tapping into the emotions. And then we're able to start figuring out, wait, what's carried that's not about me, right? Maybe if there was someone abused you or hit you, or, you got raped as a child or any kind of horrific thing, right? And then you made up that belief that I'm bad or something's wrong with me, or I'm broken or whatever. Those are all not true. Okay. Because we're all valuable. We're all worthy. But we come into this world and guess what? Turn on the news. There's a lot of violence. There's a lot of, war. There's not peace on earth. Right. So it's hard to be in the world and feel totally safe inside. Right. And so there also is this piece of realizing that we haven't completely evolved as a species. We have a long way to go, but if we're constantly in this carried shame or fear, we're not going to be able to be tied into our intuition. We're not going to be able to make clear decisions, right? Because you can only make those really clear decisions from a place of calm, from a place of peace, connection to body and mind, right? It's the cognitive and the physical and the emotional. It's working everything together to make those best decisions. So it is moving out some of that fear, some of that carried shame, kicking out those limiting beliefs so that we have clarity. Because when we believe we're enough, that we're worthy, that we deserve to have happiness, right? Then we can start having those things and creating what we really want.
Yeah. It does definitely start with that understanding that you can have this, that you're deserving of love, worthy of love,
Yeah, because we can block it out. That's the other thing. Love can be right in front of us, but if we don't think we're worthy, right, or we're not able to hold that capacity, because maybe love always had conditions, right? Maybe we felt we were only lovable if we listened, right? Or we were excuse me, only lovable if we, were performing well, or we're, if we had all those sort of conditions. It's like, well, what is love? And oh, that's uncomfortable. You're just loving me, but I'm not performing for you, or I'm not doing that stuff that I thought I was only lovable if. And so then we can kind of like push it away, right? If we don't truly believe. And so that's where I come back to this container of being able to like practice receiving too love and happiness, right? Because they've done studies around people that won the lottery, right? And they've done studies around people that lost their legs or their ability to walk. And what they found was after about 6 months or so, that level of happiness that the person was before the thing happened kind of went back to where it was, So winning the lottery didn't solve everything. It didn't create like abundance of happiness, right? And neither did not being able to walk, right? And so there's this piece of, it is such an inside job, right? It really is this internal thing. And if we want to increase our ability to have more, right, we have to practice. We have to move out old beliefs. We have to be able to have these tools. Otherwise, we're just in the hamster wheel doing what we're doing, and nothing changes, right?
Do you think that's part of the reason why people abandon a part of themselves when it does become so difficult? They don't have a belief that they're worth more.
Yeah, I mean, this is where I see addiction showing up. I've never treated addiction in it, with someone that didn't have some of these limiting beliefs, right? Mental health stuff, trauma. I just never seen it. I mean, everyone sort of says, oh, addiction, it's just totally separate thing. And I'm like, no, you have to ask the why. Why is somebody using, right? What wasn't working before? What's underneath it? Right. And if you don't deal with those core issues, if you don't deal with what's underneath the addiction, you're not going to solve that. Right. Because someone's just going to replace it. So I'll see someone like maybe they stop drinking, but then they have sex addiction, or maybe they stop, right, sex addiction, and then they have gaming addiction, and then they have, right, because they're still numbing out something. Right. Until you get to that part or that limiting belief or the trauma that's stuck in the body and start moving that out with tools. Again, yoga, Tai Chi, working with a therapist, somatic experiencing. So evidence-based trauma tools, EMDR. There's a lot of different really amazing evidence-based tools now that we have. So doing work, right? Targeting things. Oh, well, there were, I start processing with something like, oh yeah, there was that time that, I was bullied and really badly and really felt like I was, not enough and no good and didn't fit in. And I've never really shaken that. I'm like, okay, let's target that. Let's do some EMDR. That's not true. That was just a bully that, you encountered, and let's move that out. So we really have amazing ways to do it. There is a stigma still around people getting treatment, which is so sad. It's like, oh, we have tools so you can feel better, right? You can no longer feel all those things. And yet, people are afraid or they don't, want the stigma or whatever it is. So I think so many people go through life just sort of bearing it,
How do you distinguish between an addiction and something that you just like doing? Like,
yeah, sure.
how can you truly define what an addiction is?
So, I mean, we have diagnosis for that, and we're always looking at, is it impacting work, family, relationship, financial, right? You go through sort of that checklist. Is there creating a dependency, health issues, right? And so it really is like looking at the holistic person's life, right? So there's that saying, everything in moderation, sure. And some people can't do moderation. So why? Again, it comes back to why can't you? What's going on? What are you, and the addictive brain, right? The cycles of, now you're wiring your brain for use. I mean, that's a real piece too. So maybe someone is using, right, more than normal because they're covering something up, but then the addiction does take over, right? So then we have another problem, right? We're trying to solve the problem, maybe I'm alcoholic because I'm, feeling really hypervigilant. The alcohol calms me down. I feel better, but now I'm drinking and now I'm spending a lot of money. Now my body doesn't feel good, right? Now we have another problem.
Yep.
Okay. So
Makes sense. And what would be it sounds like the best thing that you can do to break an addiction is actually to heal, looking at the root of the cause and not the symptoms, right?
Right. And I think it's so true. And yet it's like, let's just take the pill. Let's do the faster thing. I think the healing is hard. And I will say that. And when we've gotten so out of touch with our body, coming back in the body, feeling some of the harder feelings, it can be like, oh, like this is, this is not uncomfortable, right? I don't want to do that. But the truth is, right, the benefits come from the hard work of healing, and I think healing in the right conditions with the right guide can be also a beautiful and amazing journey too. It doesn't have to be all just hard work. It can be really epiphanies and evolution and wisdom and growth. And I mean, I love all those things. So for me, like, but even when I go and do my own healing, because as a therapist, I'm always training and having to go back in, and people practice on me and I practice on them, and touching those uncomfortable places, right? Like within us, it's still uncomfortable. It's still hard, but I'm also humbled, and I remember my clients come in and they do that too. And so I'm like, oh, you're so brave. This is hard work. You know what I mean? This is hard, but it's worth it, right? It's worth it, because what do we really want? We want to feel better. We want to enjoy life.
Yeah, and it's definitely a process. It's very much, you feel like you've healed, and then something comes down the road a few years later and kind of tests that, doesn't it? And it's like
Always.
the levels and layers of healing.
That's so true. I mean, and I think that's the reason for that, is that we can't do it all in one sitting. It's because it's not a quick fix, right? That's why my book is so much about the practices, continuing the practices, right? For when that thing does come down the pipeline, because it will, because life does this. It's like, here we go.
Yeah.
And so if we're in a practice and we have tools, then okay, like what I say now when the thing happens, because it always does, is I go, all right, where's my lesson? What is it that I need to learn, right? Or what is the piece of growth for me here? Or and I can even, not always in the moment, it might be like a few days later, but I can kind of be in gratitude that there's this other challenge that I'm overcoming, and I can do that now. I mean, it took me a long time to get here, and again, I don't do it right away, but I still go, whoa, there's something here for me, and I can take this challenge.
Love it. I just want to touch on trauma before we bring this into land, because trauma is, again, it's one of those things very topical. I think as human beings, if we've lived a day, it's likely that we've faced trauma. But what would you say are the three best things that we can do for ourselves when it comes to trauma? And maybe offer maybe one thing that maybe isn't so commonly talked about that you feel may bring some sort of help or focus point for someone who's kind of really just sitting in their trauma at the moment.
I mean, I think a few things. I would say, being able to breathe is always huge, right? Ground, breathe,
Yeah.
taking in those breaths that aren't just in the chest, but in the belly. Doing sort of that breath with that affirmation of like, I can, like, our natural state is to heal. You think about it, you get a cut, right? It scabs, and right, like our natural state is to heal. Sometimes we just need to get out of our own way,
Yeah.
because our defenses and all those things kind of can stop the process.
Yeah.
So if there's this belief, even, right, of I am, like, my natural state is healing. So when I relax, when I breathe all the way in, when I'm able to really remember that, I can move this out. I
Yeah.
can let this pass. Like, and if you think about an animal, when it has, like, it's attacked or something happens and it survives, it shakes it out. So one of the things that I will say is, if you've had something happen, as long as you're not physically injured, right, but it was traumatic, like, go work out, do some Tai Chi, yoga, breathing, until you can get to that counselor or whatever to do maybe some EMDR, but do some physical things to, like, shake it out of your body and breathe and rest, right? Because your body, when it's gone into an adrenaline, like, so high, right, this sort of global high, they call it in somatic experiencing, where there's been a shock state or something like that, it's been so much adrenaline in your body, you actually just need to sleep, right? You need to go and rest, right? And then after, maybe do some of that working out.
Ria, how do people find out more about you, and how do they get their hands on your up and coming book, Happiness is an Inside Job Playbook?
So this is coming out, it's published right now by Balboa Press, and so hopefully in the next, I would say, 30 days, we're going to see it coming out on Amazon, Barnes and Noble. It'll be digital. I definitely recommend, because it has that workbook for writing in, definitely getting a hard copy, soft copy, so that you can write and play in it, and get messy, have fun, learn more about yourself, heal, try the tools, practice, love yourself.
Love that. And then just finally, is there anything intuitively, Ria, that you feel like you just want to share, something that you sense or feel, or maybe something we haven't really captured today, just as a kind of a leaving part for us to maybe really think about?
I think purpose, like really taking some time, because I think happiness is also joined with having a sense of purpose in the world, and really taking some time to feel and around your life of what really is my priority, what is really motivates me, what am I driven by, what calls to me, like being able to create space for that instead of living your life in a way that's like, oh, I should, or my parents said, or this is what other people do, because I think that's where we end up in places where we're not happy.
Hmm.
So there is this listening to that inner calling and finding that purpose that is definitely joined with increasing levels of happiness in our lives.
Amazing. Ria, thank you for joining me on today's Brainz magazine podcast.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining this episode with me, Mark Sefton. I hope you've really enjoyed it. Feel free to leave us a positive review on iTunes, and I look forward to welcoming you back to the next episode of the Brainz magazine podcast.